Before we begin, please note this story is intended for informational and educational purposes. Some scenes have been dramatized for storytelling clarity, but the facts are based on real investigative methods and publicly available reports. Everyone mentioned is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Viewer discretion is advised, as this video contains details that may be disturbing to some audiences. Join us as we dive deep into the haunting true story. The confession was too perfect. It matched facts no one outside law enforcement could access. But when detectives cross-checked the man's movements, his alibi was airtight, more airtight than any suspect they'd ever seen. He claimed he saw the murder but refused to explain how. As the investigation deepened, a pattern of anonymous tips, hidden communications, and impossible knowledge led detectives down a path that blurred the line between informant and pawn. This is the case of the silent informant, the man with an impossible alibi. On a damp Tuesday evening, a man named Kenji Tanaka walked into the 14th precinct in downtown Seattle. He was trembling, his clothes disheveled, and his eyes wide with a terror that seemed almost theatrical. He approached the front desk, his voice a ragged whisper, and announced, "I need to confess. I just killed someone." The desk sergeant, a veteran named Miller, had seen his share of false confessions, often from individuals suffering from mental health crises or seeking a strange form of attention. He calmly asked Kenji to take a seat, preparing to go through the motions. But this time was different. Within minutes, the calm routine of the precinct was shattered. Kenji was led into a small, sterile interview room, where he sat across from detectives Aisha Sharma and Marcus Cole. The initial details he provided were chillingly specific. He described a brutal homicide that had occurred less than 30 minutes earlier in a high-end apartment across town. The victim, a wealthy tech entrepreneur named Elena Petrova, had been found by her building's security. Kenji described the weapon, a heavy, ornate crystal decanter from her own bar cart. He recounted the precise nature of the fatal injuries, a detail that hadn't even been fully processed by the forensics team yet. Most disturbingly, he repeated Elena's final, desperate words, a plea whispered to her attacker in her native Russian. These were details no one outside the crime scene could possibly know. The information was raw, immediate, and horrifyingly accurate. The detectives exchanged a look of disbelief. It seemed they had their killer gift-wrapped and delivered to their doorstep. However, as Detective Cole ran Kenji's background check, a glaring, impossible contradiction emerged. The system flagged his location history. According to GPS data from his phone, credit card transactions, and multiple eyewitnesses, Kenji Tanaka had not been in Seattle at the time of the murder. In fact, he hadn't even been in the state of Washington. At the exact moment Elena Petrova was taking her last breath, Kenji was over 200 miles away in Portland, Oregon. He had been attending a business conference, a fact corroborated by video footage from the hotel lobby showing him checking out, timestamped just minutes before he would have needed to leave to drive to Seattle. He had paid for gas with his credit card at a station an hour outside Portland, and a highway patrol officer had even issued him a speeding warning, with the officer's body cam capturing their entire interaction. His alibi wasn't just strong. It was a digital and physical fortress, a verifiable timeline that made his presence at the crime scene an absolute impossibility. The contradiction was staggering. Detectives Sharma and Cole were seasoned investigators, accustomed to lies, half-truths, and manipulated stories. But they had never encountered anything like this. Kenji wasn't just claiming to be in two places at once. There was concrete, irrefutable evidence proving it. They confronted him with the facts. "Kenji, this doesn't make any sense," Sharma began, laying out the timeline, the receipts, the video evidence. "You were in Portland. We have proof. How could you have been here?" Kenji's composure, already fragile, began to crumble. He grew agitated, his hands shaking as he insisted, "I was there. I saw it. I saw everything." He described the room again, adding new, minute details, the scent of jasmine from a vase of wilting flowers, the way the city lights reflected off the polished floor, the specific pattern on the rug where Elena fell. These were sensory details, textures of a memory that felt real. But when pressed on the central question of how, he would only shake his head, his voice dropping to a mumble, "I can't explain it. I just know." The investigation began to pivot away from Kenji as a suspect and toward a far more disturbing possibility. If he wasn't the killer, then how did he possess such intimate knowledge of the crime? The leading theory was that someone had fed him the details. The real killer, wanting to misdirect the investigation or perhaps play a twisted psychological game, might have contacted Kenji and coached him on what to say. But this theory had its own holes. The time frame was impossibly tight. The murder had happened less than an hour before Kenji's confession. For someone to commit the act, escape the scene, and then find and meticulously brief a random person to confess on their behalf was a logistical nightmare. Furthermore, Kenji had no apparent connection to the victim, Elena Petrova, or anyone in her circle. He was a mid-level software engineer with a clean record and a quiet life. He wasn't a criminal associate or someone easily manipulated. He seemed like an ordinary man caught in an extraordinary, terrifying circumstance. The interview tapes became the centerpiece of the case. Detectives listened to them for hours, analyzing every pause, every tremor in Kenji's voice, every flicker of his eyes. His distress seemed genuine. He wasn't boasting or showing the typical signs of a pathological liar. Instead, he appeared tormented, as if haunted by a memory he couldn't reconcile with reality. During one grueling session, Detective Sharma took a different approach. She spoke to him not as a suspect, but as a witness, or perhaps even a victim. "Kenji, we believe you," she said softly. "We believe you saw this, but we need you to help us understand how. Did someone show you a video? Did someone describe it to you over the phone?" Kenji looked up, his eyes filled with a desperate, pleading confusion. "It wasn't like that," he whispered. "It was like I was watching a movie. But I was in the movie. I felt the decanter in my hand. I heard her voice in my ear." This wasn't the confession of a killer. It was the testimony of someone experiencing a profound psychological breakdown, a vicarious trauma so vivid it had supplanted his own reality. As the detectives dug deeper into Kenji's life, a strange pattern began to emerge. In the weeks leading up to the murder, he had started receiving anonymous, encrypted messages. The Tech Crimes Unit managed to decrypt fragments of these communications, uncovering a one-sided conversation where an unknown party sent him cryptic text and images. They were seemingly random at first, but in hindsight, they were a gradual feed of information about Elena Petrova's life. Pictures of her apartment building, snippets of her daily routine, details about her habits. The messages were a slow, methodical grooming process. The sender was building a narrative inside Kenji's mind, seeding it with details that would later bloom into a full-blown, hallucinatory memory of a crime he never committed. The source of the messages was untraceable, bouncing through a series of dark web relays. Whoever was behind this was a ghost, a master of digital manipulation. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. While reviewing surveillance footage from Elena's apartment building, analysts flagged a recurring figure, a food delivery courier who had made several drops to different apartments in the building over the past month, including one on the night of the murder. He was unremarkable, blending into the background. But one detail caught Detective Cole's eye. On one occasion, the courier was seen having a brief, seemingly innocuous conversation with Elena's neighbor. Cross-referencing the courier's delivery logs with the timing of the anonymous messages sent to Kenji, they found a chilling correlation. The courier was a man named Liam, Elena's estranged half-brother. He had been cut out of the family will and harbored a deep, simmering resentment. He worked for a gig-based delivery service, giving him the perfect cover to surveil Elena's building without raising suspicion. The theory crystallized. Liam was the killer. He had meticulously planned his sister's murder, but he had also planned a second, equally elaborate crime, the framing of an innocent man's mind. Liam, who had a background in software development and an interest in psychological manipulation, had likely identified Kenji online, perhaps through a shared forum or social media group, recognizing a personality susceptible to suggestion. He then began the systematic campaign of feeding Kenji information, priming him for the final act. After murdering Elena, Liam sent one last, powerful message to Kenji, a trigger that likely included the most visceral details of the crime, the victim's final words. He banked on Kenji's psychological state being fragile enough that this flood of information, combined with the weeks of grooming, would cause a complete break from reality. He wanted more than just a scapegoat. He wanted a confession so bizarre and impossible that it would send the police chasing ghosts, giving him ample time to disappear. Armed with this new theory, The detectives brought Kenji in one last time. This time, they didn't ask him about the murder. They showed him a picture of Liam. "Do you know this man, Kenji?" Sharma asked. Kenji stared at the photo, his expression unreadable at first. Then, a flicker of recognition, followed by a wave of nausea. He shook his head, but his body told a different story. I don't know," he stammered. "He looks familiar, like from a dream." The detectives now understood. Liam hadn't just fed Kenji facts. He had inserted himself into the fabricated narrative, a shadowy figure in the background of Kenji's implanted memories. With this psychological link established, and with digital forensics finally tracing a burner phone used by Liam to a location just blocks from Kenji's apartment, they had enough to secure a warrant. When the tactical team breached Liam's apartment, they found him calmly packing a suitcase. He didn't seem surprised. On his laptop, open on the desk, were files detailing advanced psychological conditioning techniques and research papers on false memory implantation. He had orchestrated the entire affair with cold, sociopathic precision. Confronted with the evidence, the digital trail, the surveillance footage, and Kenji's tortured testimony, Liam confessed. He admitted to killing his sister for her inheritance and to using Kenji as a psychological pawn, a fascinating experiment to see if he could make someone believe they had committed a crime they only witnessed through his descriptions. He showed no remorse, only a clinical pride in his macabre achievement. In the end, justice was served. Liam was convicted of the murder of Elena Petrova and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Kenji Tanaka, the path to recovery was long and arduous. He worked with therapists to unravel the tangled knot of real and implanted memories, to reclaim his own mind from the violation it had suffered. The case of the silent informant served as a chilling reminder for the Seattle Police Department. They had encountered a killer who didn't just take a life. He hijacked a mind, turning an innocent man into a living, breathing piece of false evidence. They had looked into the eyes of a man confessing to murder and realized they weren't dealing with a guilty man. They were dealing with a puppet whose strings were being pulled by a monster hiding in plain sight. All visuals and audio elements are used under fair use for commentary and analysis. This story is shared to inform, not to sensationalize. Kindly subscribe to Mystery Arena for more intriguing stories. Here, truth isn't hidden, it's uncovered. See you in the next story.